So on to our next topic here. So we will discuss the changes in pay and specifics related to that. Our speaker for this discussion is Command Master Chief Toby Ruiz. He is the Command Master Chief with the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force. Toby, it's good to have you here today, and we look forward to hearing your brief. Over to you.
And thank you, Mick Pond. Good morning to everybody out there in virtual land from Carlsbad, California. It's great to be with you all here. It's great to see so many participants here with us. Before I start, and if I may, really quick, I just want to acknowledge, in these trying times we've gone over this past year, to put something like this together for information for all of our new CPO selectees and their families. It takes a Herculean effort. I just want to say congratulations and thank you both to U.S. Navy League and to Fleet Forces for helping put this together. They're always there to deliver for us and for our families. I'm really happy to see that this event still goes on to get this important information out to you. I've been doing this for roughly about 6 years now. I think this is my 6th year as part of this effort. And so to Mick Pond 13, Mike Stevens, and Miss Mary Ellen, Mrs. Grady, I think you're online here as well too, to the core team of Hampton Roads and our Navy Services FamilyLine. Thank you all for having me back. Important information here to put out. I'm very grateful to be a part of this great effort. And to those of you in virtual land, our CPO spouses, congratulations. Huge accomplishment. I know you're proud of your chiefs, and I know that they're very busy right now. As is you are, I'm sure as well. We're asking you to do a little bit more now because we're training them, we're getting them ready for entry into the CPO mess. So congratulations to all of you, and you deserve a big thanks for that as well. I know many of you are looking forward to this brief. I do have some slides that I want to show you along the way, and I think our team, Miss Danielle, who's also been very great in keeping us together and in line there. There we go. Those are the slides we're going to go with. I won't bore you to death with PowerPoint, but there are some things I'd like to show you along the way. Next slide, please. And how we're going to do this brief here is through this roadmap. We're going to talk about your pays and allowances, also how taxes play a part in this as well. And I know what you are all anxious about is the changes now that your spouse is about to become a Chief Petty Officer. We'll touch very briefly on benefits, and then also if there's an opportunity for some questions and answers at the end, more than happy to address those along the way. If we do run out of time here, please don't hold your questions to yourself. Ask somebody who is able to help you along this way, whether it be your sponsors, whether it be other Chief Petty Officers. I will make myself available offline here as well through Facebook and through other communication means. Don't leave your questions unanswered as we go through this. It's very important that you understand that. You would be surprised at how many of our spouses, just in general of our sailors, don't know about their spouses' pays, allowances, or even maybe what a military LES looks like. And so that's the visuals I'm going to give you for the next few slides here to kind of address 2 in 1, if you will. Next slide, please. So this is what a military leave and earnings statement looks like. It's called a military LES. And what I would like to do is kind of break this down by sections. And for those of you who've already seen this, know what this is all about, please bear with me. Again, the intent here is to level the playing field, to make sure that all of our spouses are able to see this and to understand it as we're going through. And so go ahead and click the next slide. This is the first section that we're going to talk about. And again, very basic information: your name, social security number, pay grades, your date of pay grades. Hold on to that thought because we'll be talking about that here in a little bit, a couple slides down the road here. Total years of service. ETS on the LES is basically your end of active obligated service or the end of contract for this time, along with the service branch. Everybody's here is USN. Your ADSN covers bank information mainly, and then of course the pay period that's covered. Your LESs are printed each month, available each month in a 30 or 31 day format. Next slide, please. And I'm going to ask you to click here a couple times. So we're going to break this top center section down into 4 pieces for you. First one's entitlements. Next slide, is your deductions. Next slide is your allotments. And the final group here, next slide, is basically the summary. And so now what we'll do is let's go back to the entitlements. Next slide, please. There we go. And your entitlement section here is basically this is the green. You notice we put in green color, right? Green on the scene. Your basic pays, your incentive pays, critical pays, any kind of money that is earned during this pay period will be here in this entitlement section. Next slide, please. You'll also see that we have allowances that are included in here too. Oops, can I have you back one? And go ahead and click forward. There you go. So the allowances here will also include your basic allowance for housing, for those of you in the areas that you live in, subsistence, which is basically, eating meals on board the ship, or, your daily meals allowances, if you will. COLA, for those lucky enough to get some COLA along the way. Also, any kind of other allowances, dislocation allowances, clothing allowances, so forth. This will all be listed in the entitlements entitlements section. We'll also talk a little bit more about paying allowances and the differences between the two in a couple slides down the road. Next slide, please. So next we have your deductions. As with any pay that we get, we have to pay taxes on them. This is where our federal taxes are listed. In addition to our FICA taxes, our federal insurance contributions acts, if you will, both Social Security and Medicare are covered here. SGLI, your service members group life insurance, also the same for family SGLI. Any active duty members will pay into this. For those participating in the thrift savings plan, this is where those deductions will be looked at as well, and we'll also address that in a separate column. Any repayments that you may or your spouse may owe here will be deducted, will be annotated in this fund as well to your mid-month pay. Mid-month pay is basically just whatever the remaining balance is, and they divide it by 2, and obviously those are the 2 pay periods we have per month. Next slide, please. Your allotment section is almost 99% of the time set up by your sailor, or will have some kind of concurrence from your sailor so that there's no surprises here with respect to allotments. A lot of times, anybody that lives in base housing will have allotment set up to obviously to make your rent payment every month. But you can also set up savings deposits. You can, if you have a fixed government loan that you need to pay back, you can set up an allotment to pay this. TRICARE Dental, again, all active members have to pay into this. Donations, if you contribute to, say, the Combined Federal Campaign, and you set up allotments there every month to go to your beneficiary of choice, that will be set there. Also Navy Marine Corps Relief Society and others, all there as well. And in addition to any other type of discretionary payments or savings that you want to have automatically taken out every month prior to paydays, this is where those allotments will be set up. And next slide, please. And so again, briefly, the summary section here is basically just the last 3 things that we've talked about. It's your entitlements, take away your deductions, take away your allotments, and that basically is your end of month pay. Remember, again, your mid-month pay will be captured in the deductions on block number 2 there. Remember, just as a side note, we always get paid for the previous 2 weeks worth of work. And so, potatoes, tomatoes, whatever you want to call it. Remember, though, that the military paydays are on the 16th and on the 30th or 31st of each month, and not the, not the 1st and the 16th, which is a common misperception, or people anticipate money, you know, ahead of when they actually did the pay period and the work, and that's not the case here, and your LES reflects this as well. A couple of other things here. Next click, you'll see that there are two additional acronyms there. One is called UDEEMS, your date of initial enlistment in the military service. Basically, this is just used for retirement calculations, retirement purposes for anybody that's entered the service now after, I believe it's August of 1986. This date is the same as their active duty service dates, is where they match up there. Again, just to help for retirement pay. If you click it again, there one right next to that is also what's called your red plan. And there's a typo here, and I apologize. I didn't catch this when I was updating this presentation. The retirement plan choices now, that you'll see that the third bullet there called choice, that no longer exists. That was only for the year 2018. And so now basically we have what's called your high 3, your redux for some of the sailors that still have the redux. And then for a lot of our newer sailors and any new sailor that joins our Navy now after January 1st of 2018, they're all part of the BRS, the blended retirement system. And if we have time at the end, we can address that as well along the way. This block here shows you what retirement plan your sailor is currently attached to. Next slide, please. So the middle section here is basically what we call your information data. A lot of numbers there. It talks about your leave balance, not just what your leave balance is currently in the current fiscal year that you're in. Remember, your spouse gets 30 days of leave every year along the way. But there's also a counter kind of right next to it that talks about how many days of leave they are anticipated to have that leads up to their end of service that we talked about earlier. Again, your cumulative federal and state taxes are also listed here. Same thing with your FICA withholdings. There's an information block here about BAH. It just basically says what your zip code that you're living or are assigned to, and that's where the BAH rate comes from. And also for those of you participating in the thrift savings plan, this is that, again, that cumulative information of everything that you've contributed to during this time. It is in this information block here, the red block as well. And then lastly, next slide, please. Down on the bottom is what's called your remarks section. So anything of general announcement that the military services put out, whether it's Navy, whether it's general Navy, general military, any of our services, they may come out here and from different varying levels of command. Most recently, in recent LESs, you've probably seen remarks about COVID and its impacts along the way. That's kind of those general announcements that I'm talking about. It will also give you a literal explanation of any stop, start, or changes that have been made in any of the sections that we talked about above, whether it's entitlements, deductions, allotments. If anything has changed in that, this section will talk specifically about what those are. If people take leave, any of that stuff, it will all be included here in this particular block section there. And then also at the very top there, right underneath the top red line, it also gives you cumulative totals of all the entitlements and deductions that you have received for this calendar year so far. And so at this point, very briefly, that's what a military LES looks like. We have covered down on a lot of the basic information. What I'd like to do now, if we can go to the next slide, please, let's talk about taxes here for a little bit and how taxes play into your military pay. The general rule to remember, if it ends in pay, I don't know if you can see me doing the little quotation marks, but if it ends in pay, basically it's taxable. So things like your basic pay, your special pay, incentive pay, bonuses, family separation pay that you may inquire because of a deployment or something, those are all taxable and taxes will be taken from that. Whereas allowances, and a lot of them again end in the word allowance, are not, or they have the word allowance in there somewhere, those are not taxable. Your basic allowance for housing, your basic allowance for subsistence, clothing allowances that we get every year, dislocation allowance. And again, for those of you fortunate enough to get some cost of living allowance and adjustments based on where you live, those are all non-taxable along the way. I will also talk here very quickly about state taxes. I didn't make a slide on this, but I updated my notes here last night. There are, depending on what your home state that is currently listed in your service member's file is, you may not get charged state income tax, and that's always a huge benefit. Alaska, Texas, Wyoming, Washington, Florida, Nevada, South Dakota, and then also Tennessee and New Hampshire up to a point. So they don't charge state taxes on income, and that could be a particular benefit. I do need to caution here, remember that we are talking your home state, which is changeable as you progress through military stations, moving around and so forth, not your home of record. Home of record is where your service member joined the Navy from or affiliated from the Navy from, and hopefully they kept those states listed as the home state as well. Next slide, please. This is a long verbiage, just basically if your spouse deploys, 9 times out of 10, they're going to go to a combat zone somewhere. Not always, but the possibility is there. The combat zones are designated by the president through executive orders and through world situations as they develop. In the event that your service members serve in those areas, their base, all those pays that I just talked about on the last slide with you, those will not be taxed for that duration. And again, it varies a little bit on where they're at, how long they're there, and how long they're actually in theater. But that's important to know too, because sometimes your spouse will make a decision on, maybe I re-enlist for a re-enlistment bonus in what we call our tax-free zones or in those combat zones, because now they collect all of that money. None of that money will be taxed or touched because they earned it in that tax-free zone. So this is kind of where this slide discusses some of those areas. Next slide, please. I would be remiss if I did not explain this either, and this is very wordy, so I'll try to make this nice and short and simple for you. If you remember back in August of 2020, a presidential order was signed that was in part relating to COVID relief. And what they did was they did not deduct any Social Security taxes from our paydays from September of 2020 through December of 2020. What was supposed to happen is that starting now in January, we were going to start paying those Social Security taxes again, in addition to paying back those 4 months of Social Security taxes that they didn't take out initially. So they were going to double tap us, if you will. They were going to do that for a period of 4 months, January 2021 to April of 2021. Just this last Monday, and it was updated here, when Congress signed the Appropriations Act, that payback period is now going to be all of 2021. So instead of just the 8 pay periods that were going to be effective from January to April, it's now going to be the entire year, which is really good because we'll pay back those Social Security taxes that we need to pay back. But over a year's period, now you're talking 24 periods, which means they're going to take a lot less out from each of our paydays from 2021. So I just felt that I needed to make sure that I pass that on to you. There are no actions, nothing required from your service members, from your spouses as this takes place. So up to this point, that's a lot of blah, blah that I had for you there. Just some general information, catching everybody up for pays, if you will. So now, next slide, let's go to the important question, because I know you've all got it. What changes in pay are coming now that my sailor has been selected for chief? Also, you've probably heard this already, and if not, we're going to give you a quick education on it. What exactly does it mean that my chief is frocked? Okay, next slide, please. So this is where we talk about frocked versus advancement. Frocking is a practice that we have carried out in the Navy for quite some time, and it's basically where if somebody is selected for promotion to the next pay grade, we authorize them to wear the uniform, put on the insignia, carry out those duties, responsibilities, and authorities to that new rank that they are going to be promoted to. But it's just it's just that they are just wearing it and carrying out those duties. They're not necessarily getting paid for it yet. We frock in the Navy because the number of people that we are allowed to have in a certain rank or pay grade, it's all mandated by federal law. And this is especially true with chief petty officers all the way up to the most senior master chief we have in the Navy. So basically, and we do this all the time. This also happens with our junior sailors as well. But the official date of promotion, your chief will be promoted at some point during this fiscal year. It can start from September of 2020 and will go all the way through August of 2021. In the LES that I showed you, you will normally get a notification 60 days out in the remarks section that says your expected pay date will be this effective time. And it's always on the 16th, and again it's based on whatever month your chief will be promoted at that time. So hopefully you'll get a little bit of a heads up as it comes. If not, that's okay. You get it'll be significant on that payday. You'll know when your chief actually starts getting paid for chief. So next slide. And looking at the leadership panel questions earlier that we had, Miss Jenny Joy from Antioch, California had asked this question, and so this is where I want to implement her answer here. Hopefully you all can see there, this is the 2021 active duty enlisted pays for both first class petty officer and chief petty officer for this year. And you notice again on the top row, you have over 6, over 8. That's how many total years of Navy service that your chief has there. Significant differences here, and again, depending on where everybody in here should have their chief somewhere on that line, from over 6 all the way up to over 22, and that's where your pays are going to be. Now remember, if your chief is frocked, they are going to continue to receive E6 pay until they are advanced to E7 in pay grade, okay? And again, that notification will come up, and again, you'll notice the increase in pay, but it may not be right after they put on their new uniforms and they got that bright special chiefs look going on. It may, for a lot of our chiefs, it probably won't be until August of 2021 before they will start seeing that. Again, that's just the normal frocking process as we go through that. So if you notice that, again, the differences here, this is with your basic pay, again, the largest single portion of your members' pay. Next slide, please. Talks about BAH rates. BAH is the same way. So I know we're in a worldwide virtual group here, and I apologize up front. I drew this up only for the Hampton Roads area, but this gives you an example, and the content still there depending on wherever you are at. Again, if you look at it, both E6 and E7 BAH rates, this is for the Portsmouth and or the Hampton Roads area. Again, you will not start collecting E7 BAH rates until your spouse is actually advanced in rate to E7. So let me, I will answer this question here too. Had a couple more same question from 2 different people, from Miss Casilla from Winchester, California, also Miss Ashley from Virginia Beach. They asked about, because this is an off year, obviously, While this should have been done back in September and the pay cycles normally start in September of each year, how does this year and your specific class of chiefs affect pay since we're pushed everything to the right? It has not affected any dates of pay grade or advancements, if you will. You will see that some of your chiefs who may be a little longer tooth in the Navy, little, we'll call them the older farts here, who've been around for a little bit, those are usually always the ones who are those first increments or the first ones to advance once those pay once the promotions happen, and that is usually always starting in September. In this case, because we're already in January and nobody has technically been frocked yet or put on the new uniform yet, what will happen for them is that they will not see that increase in pay until after pinning, which is at the end of the month, what we call the greatest day of their professional lives, January the 29th, for almost all of our new chiefs. What that means is that if they were supposed to be advanced in rank and promoted, not frocked, but actually advanced back in September of 2020, that is still going to happen. They will just receive the back pay. So you talk about one heck of a paycheck coming. That will be for some of you. Others will have to wait because, again, they're going to remain frocked. They can wear the uniform, but they cannot, they will not be able to, to get that pay until their data pay grade comes up. So that's a great question. And we are definitely keeping track of that. The selection board still makes their decisions, and all of those rank and file, if you will, and determining on who advances first, who's frocked, so forth. That is all continuing, but nobody should see any initial changes of pay or status with that until starting in February. And again, don't worry, if those of you that are due backdate, you will definitely see that along the way. Next slide, please. So you just saw a great presentation of the uniforms, and that's one of the biggest changes that we as chiefs experience when we make that transition. Of course, when you get a whole new sets of uniform, it comes out to a pretty high cost. Hopefully, most of your spouses, if not all of you, have already done your uniform fit outs. And a lot have, this has probably already been explained, but again, I'd be remiss if we didn't share it with you here as well. All new chief petty officers get a one-time initial allowance. It's what, obviously to buy all of the new uniforms that you just saw in the presentation in the last video. Those initial allowance amounts for this year for 21, you see there, males are $1,096, females $1,146. Again, though, as with the last 2 points that I've shared with you, your new chief will not receive this allowance either until they start getting paid for chief petty officer. So as I shared with you, the yearly cycle, if you will, or the increments goes from September through August. For those of you who may have more junior chiefs, or they're not going to get advanced until the later months, that means that you're between now and then, you're still going to have to make some form of a payment for all of these uniforms that they have purchased. And so with that, next slide, please. This is from the Navy Exchange and our uniform shops. And basically you have one of 4 ways that you can pay for those uniforms. And again, this is probably already covered, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. If you're carrying around a whole wad of cash and you want to pay them all up with green on the scene, absolutely, that you definitely have that preference to do that. Some people put them on their credit cards or on a debit card, or they have a special card where they have some money put aside and they just want to pay it that way and then pay back on the credit card. You could definitely do that. The Navy Exchange has offered a military star card for those that may want to put their new uniform purchases on that star card. Again, whether you have it or not, in the event that you don't have it and you applied and got one for this purpose, Then there were also some added benefits as well. Whether it's 5% off the purchases, 0% interest for 12 months. And they were also adding some other perks along the way with this. So Star Card is a third option. A very common option that we utilize all the time is called the DPP, or the Deferred Payment Plan. And this is specifically from NEX that's applicable only to the uniforms and not the basic military Star Card privileges that card gives. Where basically, again, you purchase your uniforms out and then you agree to pay the balance off over a 12-month period. The thing is again, whether you're getting paid for, Chief, or not, you still have to make payments on this deferred payment plan up until the uniforms are paid off. And that's, again, from 12 months from wherever they start this plan out. The beauty about using this is, again, it's tax-free. There's no interest that's gathered on this. And you can make those minimum payments, and that's all that I would recommend you do. Make the minimum payments, because what will happen is when your chief does get paid for Chief Petty Officer and you see that uniform allowance kick in, then you can pay the remaining balance off with that surge of money that you've received. If you've already been putting into it, your balance is going to be lower, so you can keep the difference of what that uniform allowance initially given to you. You can keep that difference. So again, another great incentive by our military exchange systems, NEX in particular, to allow us to do this with very little overhead and interest affected here. Again, we're requiring your spouses to purchase these uniforms, and they've offered great incentives to be able to do this without maximum impact there to the family. Next slide, please. This is the benefit slide, and again, I'm just going to touch on this very, very briefly, and then if we have any questions or concerns, we can. We're making some pretty good time here, so we can definitely catch them on the backside. The retirement options, again, that we were talking about through a savings plan, that's where a lot of our sailors are starting to turn to. Of course, anybody who's new after 2018 have to enroll in this through the blended retirement system, which is all based on contributions and then matching for the future of retirements along the way. So through the savings plan, BRS, big things. We also have educational benefits. Don't forget that if you're your spouse is trying to go to college, maybe get up some classes, get that degree. The tuition assistance is available to them. Hopefully they've paid into their GI Bill as well, whether for themselves or whether for you as beneficiaries. Those opportunities are there as well. And as we continue moving forward, you're going to hear more about what we call our Navy College program. I'm sorry, Navy University. I'm getting my acronyms mixed up here. But basically, that's more of opportunities for furthering college education based on experience, based on your chief's performance in their particular rates. That's coming down the road, so stay tuned for that. There's also life insurance. Again, we talked about that a little bit with SGLI and Family Service Group life insurance. While they are in an active duty status, your spouses have to contribute to that. With travel, you get other benefits. Space A flights were available, and of course, COVID right now is dictating a lot of that. But when we start opening back up, and you have some time for an overseas flight, don't want to necessarily pay the commercial carriers those outrageous ticket fees that may be there. There may be opportunities to use Space A flights based on what's available, when they're going. You have to be a little bit more flexible, of course, in your travel plans, but it's a huge benefit that many, many people take advantage of if they're playing it right. Same thing with our barracks system, or our what we'll call our Navy hotels, the Navy Gateway Inns and systems. That's a benefit that we're entitled to, where you can stay on base for sometimes a much lower rate than staying out in town at a hotel. If I may too, really quickly go back to life insurance. Make sure that your chief has their page 2, which is your dependent information form, and their SGLI forms, both for the service member and for families, up to date and signed. It's always good to go back and review. You just never know what's going to happen. And, you know, I don't want to come off here sounding morbid, but if they were to be gone tomorrow, are you going to be taken care of? A lot of this through the military beneficiary side is based on what is on that page 2 SGLI, making sure that the families are taken care of. So please make sure and remind them, poke at them a little bit and say, hey, have you updated your page 2 in SGLI? Last slide. I want to PowerPoint you out here as much anymore, but there is a plethora of Navy resources that are out there for both the service members and our families. And this right here is a portal, hopefully you've heard of it, called the My Navy portal. And you look at all those different links on there, that they pretty much have almost every subject that deals with pay, personnel issues, sailor development. They have so much that's offered here at this My Navy portal. And this is a screenshot that I took for this presentation of all the different links, all the sources of information that are available to you in case questions come up, in case those one-off scenarios that you may need a little guidance or trying to find either for you or for one of your sailors or one of your, your fellow family members there. Go to this. It's my.navy.mil, M-I-L. That's the website. And again, any of those links will be open to you. Now you'll see that there are some with little locks next to them. Those are either you have to have, special access to those, or your service member has to log in there using their military CAT card. You won't be able to get into those, but it's still great resources of information to be able to go in there and find what answers you may be looking for to a particular situation. I think that's it for me, Gavin. If you go to the next slide, hopefully you're not feeling like that person there on the desk, but I know we have a little bit of time here. Are there any questions out there, or if our panel members are monitoring the chats, is there any chats that are coming up through there? Kind of give it a 5 or 10 second alligator.
Hey, Toby, this is Mike. There are a couple of questions, and I'm going to ask them to you real quick, okay? So you know how I know that this is a really, really important topic is the entire time you're talking, I'm watching the attendance numbers go up. so you know it's an important topic, right? The numbers weren't going down, Toby, they were going up. So a couple of questions, Toby, from the field. It looks like we have a spouse that has said, so this is something obviously she's heard in a discussion. It says some selects said they are already getting paid because they were number 2 on the list. Is this correct?
So I cannot give the specific question to that particular chief or the sailor that may be asking that question. A little earlier, I gave you what Navy Personnel Command, and talking specifically with Force Master Chief Dichi, had given me about that information, where we have, as I mentioned, we have several sailors that were technically advanced on September 16th of 2020, and they will receive that monetary benefit. Now, from what our understanding was that none of that was going to happen until starting in February. If they've already started getting paid, hey, good on you. A little bit of green on the scene, but they still will not wear the uniform until they are formally accepted and pinned. And again, as we mentioned, that'll be for most on January the 29th.
Right. And it looks like, Toby, the other question is essentially connected to that question. Is that, when they recognize when the results come out that there's a list and people have a number on that list, And it looks like the question is does your pay kick in based on where you're at in that list?
Yeah, and so to reiterate, yes, that is correct. That's kind of there, and there's no. I will tell you that, the selection board doesn't say that guy's number one, that guy's number two. They don't. That list does not figure that. What that list is a combination of things, again, versus how long they've been in the Navy, how long they've been in their particular rating, and placement amongst all of those quotas. But again, the smaller the number, the more senior they are of that particular group, and will impact at some point when they start getting paid and are advanced in grade to Chief Petty Officer. So both great questions, and good conversation. It's good to hear that they're asking these questions, having those conversations out there.
Terrific, thanks. So Toby, I'm sure somebody sees behind me here, right? So this isn't me. This is my father-in-law, right? So I'm in Florida right now, in Pensacola. Teresa and I are down here spending some time with her folks, and he's a retired Chief Petty Officer, and he served in Korea and Vietnam. And this is some of the stuff that's in his office that I've hijacked from him today in order to do this event. But so I thought I would just share that with everybody, that my father-in-law is a proud retired Navy Chief Petty Officer.
That's awesome.
So Toby, thank you.
I'm sorry, boss. I just want to say, make sure you thank him for his service and laying that foundation down for all of us to follow. And if I just may really quick to the group out there, again, congratulations. Your spouse has hit a significant accomplishment here. You're a big part of that. And so any sailor that I think that's worth their salt will say that we don't succeed without the love and support that our family gives us. Take pride in that. You're a big part of this, and the best is yet to come. As I tell people in some talks that I have, there's no better time than right now to be a Chief Petty Officer in our great United States Navy. So thank you for all you do. To the Navy League team, Mick Pond, thank you again so much for the opportunity to spend some time with you here this morning. I am on Facebook. If anybody wants to talk offline, I'm always accessible, and I love these conversations. So thank you very much. God bless.